There are many more primaries before the midterms this fall, but based on the number of women running, we could see more of them in office than ever. We wanted to ask journalists who cover Capitol Hill how this wave of women could impact Washington. I sat down with Molly Hooper from the Hill and Karen Tumulty from the Washington Post. Is it too early to tell how an influx of women in Congress would affect the dynamic?
I think it is, and I think that you have to look at what women bring to Congress, and women aren't monolithic. And that we saw that with the Hillary Clinton presidential election, and people thought, oh, women make up majority of the voting population. Of course she's going to win. She didn't.
What about the way, Karen, that Washington works? I mean, the argument for having more women in Congress is that at the very least there may be more opportunities to compromise. So how do you think an influx of women in Washington might change the dynamic in the city?
Well, I think there are two things going on here. Yes, it is true there are more women running for office than we have ever seen. Right now, potentially, there are over 400 women in the mix to run for the U.S. House. But what you're also seeing is that the kind of women running are very different. They are, in the past when we've had big influxes of women candidates, they've usually been people who've held an office before. These are women who are coming directly out of other backgrounds, out of activism, out of the Me Too movement. And I think that, depending on how many of them actually get elected, they are going to be here not only to pass a set of legislation, but really to change the culture of this place.
You mentioned, Karen, the Me Too movement. How do you think that's affected women's view of political action, political activity? Has it sort of shaped some women's political ambitions?
I think it has, and I think it has shaped what they will put up with in the system. I've been struck, for instance, by how many women are out there on the campaign trail telling their own Me Too stories. And whether you're talking about women running for the State House, women running for Congress. And I talked to Pat Schroeder, who was a very outspoken congresswoman in the 80s, and she said, we would never have dared tell these stories because, yes, of course they were happening. And of course, women among themselves would warn each other about who not to get on the elevator with. But she said people weren't willing to be that vulnerable. And now women are really standing up and, again, making their own stories part of the reason they are running.
Also, I think it's a generational issue as well, because if you notice, Nancy Pelosi, one of the most powerful women, individuals in this town, several years ago when she was Speaker of the House, she didn't tell her Me Too story. I mean, we didn't see women who were elected at about the time that she was elected and as involved in politics as she has been, really, highlighting the Me Too movement so much. I mean, I talked to members who have been here for decades, and they really haven't spoken out about it.
So let me go back to this notion of women across the country. It's been called a pink wave when it comes to this energy of the so-called pink wave, Molly. I mean, what are Democrats saying that they're doing? Are they grasping and harnessing that energy?
Well, I think they are. I think they're trying to keep in mind, this pink wave is overwhelmingly blue. And if you look at a number of these races, you'll see there's quite a few women running in the same race in these primaries, and it pits them against each other. So that's one thing to consider. Another aspect is, why are people running for office? It seems like this country is sick and tired of polarized politics. And so if you look to somebody like Sherry Bustos from Illinois, who's a Democrat. She is conservative on a number of issues. She represents a very purple district in Illinois. The Democrats are really highlighting Sherry Bustos and having her kind of go around into districts that are actually represented by Republicans, and to talk, because they hold her up as sort of a model of someone these Democratic candidates can look to for. This is how you kind of do it. People want moderates, it seems, and we're losing a lot of moderates given the retirements in the GOP, moderate women like Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, and so I think Democrats are trying to at least the DCCC, which, and this is kind of counterintuitive, they're kind of looking for members who will appeal in those red districts.
Yeah, what do you think, Karen? If you're a Democrat and a national Democrat, you're sort of surveying the landscape here. I mean, you see this pink wave, this so-called pink wave. What are you trying to do? What are they trying to do to harness that energy?
Well, obviously, there are a lot of Democratic women running, but I also think it's important to remember that the Democratic Party was really hollowed out over the last 8 years. They lost a lot of state houses, a lot of state legislative seats, and so they are contesting offices that they didn't in the last couple of cycles. The other thing that's important to think about is think beyond Congress, because there is now a record number of women running for governor. It's always been a little bit harder for women to make that leap into executive office, to be the decider. And now we've seen, last I looked, I think it was something like 80 women, Republicans and Democrats, in the mix running for governor.
And a number of those are Republican women. Well, as you said, Republican women from the House. You look at Kristi Noem, who's running in South Dakota. She represents the state at large. So I mean, she's already won statewide. Diane Black in Tennessee is running for governor, also a Republican. She was the head of the Budget Committee.
But Molly, why do you think that it's been the case traditionally, at least before now, that more women haven't come forward to run for those executive positions?
Well, I think it's difficult. You have to raise money, and I mean, if you look at I don't want to say the gals. If you look at the women who are running for those positions, quite a few of them are in the House And so that sort of gives you a platform. They've already been raising money, active on a state level, and so they have sort of, a built-in foundation off which to springboard. And if you look at who's running, Kristi Noem, she sits on Ways and Means Committee. She's been good at raising money. You know, that's a very powerful committee. Diane Black, same thing, Budget Chairwoman. It's a great platform off which to run. And, you know, she's had that leadership experience running a committee. And you also have to look at what they did in their former lives. And they were really, Diane Black was a nurse. Kristi Noem ran her family farm. So there's that aspect as well. They haven't been career politicians.
Karen, let me turn to you. I spoke with a Democratic woman who is running for office in Alabama. It is a local county commissioner seat. And there's a sense that she feels some momentum right now in 2018, despite the fact that she is in a deeply conservative state. Has the Democratic Party focused resources on down-ballot races?
They haven't, and that's a big problem. But the important thing to remember about these local offices is that people don't view them in quite the same partisan frame as they do, say, Congress or governors and senators. The closer you get to the people, the more they're worried about getting the schools fixed. You know, there's no such thing as a Democrat or Republican pothole. And so in some ways, it's the partisanship that has divided us so much on the national level doesn't quite apply, and as a result, there may be opportunities for Democrats at these more local offices.
What do you think, Molly? Are Democrats focusing on down-ballot races in red areas in particular?
I agree with Karen. I don't think they are so much, and that is a problem. However, given the momentum, when you see the turnouts at these rallies that we've had over the past year and a half, this energy and spirit that's really injected the country on both sides of the aisle, I think that will help Democratic candidates, and that Democrats will come out to vote, and then by extension, those down ballot races help.
But you also look at Virginia last fall, and the Democrats flipped 15 Republican seats. 13 of those candidates were women, and they were not only running for open seats, they were contesting against incumbents, and that is also something that is, it is something women in the past have not been as eager to do.
Exactly, and I think that's what's kind of exciting. I mean, regardless of whether, women are going to vote as en bloc, it's nice to see different perspectives come into Washington, D.C., because covering this place, it kind of gets, same old routine, but then you get some fresh life in here, and you get to see, what's going on in the country, or, around the country from different perspectives. And I think that helped to humanize the place a little bit, and perhaps an injection of new blood will help start moving things. Maybe.
All right, Molly Hooper, Karen Tumulty, thank you both so much.